the ladies go first. Okay. So, this is really very interesting. I get the chance to talk to 3 students about 3 very interesting and very diverse research papers. So I'm going to let each of them tell you a little bit about themselves and about the paper that they have talked about. So we'll start with Anita here. So Anita, you are in a very special position, you see, because as I explained to you just beforehand, your paper is on an area which is of great interest to me. Now, it's of interest to me, I should explain, for research reasons, not because it's a topic that's necessarily a very attractive topic. So perhaps you should start by explaining a little bit about yourself and about what your topic is.
Sure. First of all, I'm Anita J, and I'm from the School of Law. Currently, I'm doing PCLL, Postgraduate Certificate in Laws, and I did this paper in LLB, part of my undergraduate law degree. And I think the main reason why I chose this paper was because in high school, I did a paper also on stalking. It wasn't specifically on cyber stalking, but I focused mainly on the psychological aspect. So I focused on the effects of stalking on the victims. And then for this paper specifically, I focused on the legal aspects because I am writing writing based on a course, a law course, which was also part of law review. I was part of the editorial board for 2 years. First year, I was an editor, and in the second year, I was the editor-in-chief. And through this course, I was able to write a paper which focused specifically on cyber stalking, which is a very dysfunctional behavior, very repetitive and harassing behavior towards another, which affects them severely. And before I focused mainly on the psychological aspect, so now I looked into the legal aspect, which was mentioned earlier. And in 2011, there was a consultation paper, and because there's no fixed law or legislation on it right now, so then I looked into the different laws in different countries as well, and I compared it. So I think the main reason why I chose it was because of, I wouldn't say interest, but because it's such a serious issue, but it's not addressed in law. So then I would like to look further to see what else can be done. And despite the fact that I focused on the legal aspect, I think it's important for the whole society to work together. So these social workers or police enforcement, law enforcement. So then, yeah, I think that's
okay. Let me just explain then. So my background is that I actually was involved in the proposals which the Law Reform Commission put forward on stalking. So perhaps I'm going to ask you a question and take advantage of your expertise here. So perhaps you can explain a little bit about in what way cyber stalking is different other than simply the technology, and whether the proposals that the government has put forward on stalking, which haven't been implemented, whether they actually would help with cyber stalking, or there's a need for something more specialized for cyber stalking.
Well, first of all, the difference between cyber stalking and stalking. I think as you mentioned, the main difference is the mode and the medium. So firstly, stalking, it involves, say, one person following another person and doing things physically. But then for cyber stalking, they use technology, they use emails, they use WeChat. They use other forms of technology.
Clearly an expert here. Can I ask you a slightly different question then? So, yes. In what way? What's the difference between cyber stalking and cyber bullying?
I think in essence, the effects is really similar. In my paper, I didn't specifically talk about the differences, but I believe cyber stalking is more serious, and it would lead to more detrimental consequences, which includes murder, rape, if that person is very into the victim. And okay. In terms of the second,
sorry. Yes, around.
Yes, second question, it was about the reforms and what can be done. I think currently looking at the proposal, it's quite general compared to the United States, where they list out specifically what types of cyber stalking behavior. I think it would be helpful, because if it's too general, then it won't capture and it won't address the the different forms of cyber stalking. So I think that is one of the problem, and also how it can be enforced, because it's not as transparent. It cannot be monitored easily. So that should be something that we should focus on.
Okay, so given all of your experience in this, then what sort of advice would you give to, or insights with the other students who are here, in terms of both doing this in general and what sort of specific issues they need to be prepared for?
In terms of writing, I think first of all, choose a topic that you are interested in, because if you are not interested in the topic, you would be spending hours, weeks, months on something which you don't like. And it's very important because you eat with it, you sleep with it, you have to research. And talking about research, there is so much we can research on. We cannot possibly research everything before we write. I used to adopt an approach where I would like to research on anything and everything possible before I start writing. But this is not possible, and it's not feasible, because every day there are new updates, there are new developments, and especially for a topic like this, it's impossible to research everything and then start writing.
Thank you very much, Anita. I'm looking forward to reading your paper.
Thank you.
Okay, so now perhaps we can move on to Lunar. So this is a very different paper. So we're moving on from legal analysis to statistical analysis in communications. So perhaps you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your research topic.
Hello, I'm Liuna. I'm from the Media and Communication Department. Now I'm a final year PhD candidate, and I'm writing my dissertation. And this paper is kind of a term paper I did in my first year about the course of quantitative research methods. So it's social science methods training. And in this paper, I generally examined the factors of citizens' online political communication. Means what kind of things would influence your behavior of talking about politics online. And I used the newly learned kind of advanced method of structural equation modeling to analyze a second-hand data which is US based, and the results suggest that if you think the new media are very important information source for you to get the politics or public affairs, you're more likely to talk about politics online. And also another aspect to mention is that if you ever experienced very good interaction with the government officials by email, in my research, you'd be more likely to talk about politics online.
Now, when she explained this to me before, I was somewhat shocked, because I was shocked by the idea that you would email government officials and get a reply. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what it actually meant. You meant they sent an email to the government official and somebody replied. Did I get that right?
Yeah, since the data is a second-hand data, and it didn't distinguish who would reply your email. Just you.
So I guess you're grateful that you got a reply, and you're very positive from having received a reply. Is that
actually,
correct?
the government-citizen interaction has 3 levels. The first one is whether you send the email or not, and the second one is whether you get a reply or not, and the third one is whether you are satisfied with the response or not. So if you say yes to all these 3 questions, and you identify, then you get a very good interaction with the government officials.
And you're clearly a very lucky person. We understand that. So, I mean, given this is quite a lot of technical expertise required, I assume, to write this paper. So what sort of lessons do you have? What sort of insights do you have for the other students in terms of what's a good strategy for writing a paper like this?
When I was writing this paper, I was also a beginner in the kind of sophisticated or advanced quantitative research methods in the social science. And if I would make some suggestions, that I would quote from my instructor's words, then learn something more sophisticated and more advanced. It will make you more capable to analyze the data or to do better research that you want to do. And the second one is for beginners in this kind of advanced methods, advanced research methods. Maybe use the second-hand data is a good starting point because they usually have very high quality than the first-hand data you collect by yourself.
That's a recommendation I really appreciate. One of the problems in Hong Kong is we don't have a very good culture of sharing research data. That's one of my objectives to change. So I'm very happy to hear that you appreciate the value of archive data sets. Thank you very much. So now we move on to our third writer. So this is a gentleman, again, a very different context. We've had legal analysis, statistical analysis, and now we have creative writing. So maybe you'd like to introduce yourself, Robert, and tell us something about it. I'll give you the mic.
Hello, thank you. So my name is Robert Powers. I am a second-year postgraduate student in the creative writing program in the Department of English. I specialize in fiction, so first and foremost, I consider myself a fiction writer, maybe second, an academic in this context. The paper that I wrote, as part of the two-year program, the creative writing program, we work towards what's called a creative thesis. So for me, I'm working towards the completion of 80 pages of polished fiction. In support of that creative thesis, we have a critical thesis to write on a aspect of craft, basically, to write a research paper on a particular element of craft. I chose to work on narrative. For those who might not be familiar with the difference between narrative and story, I would consider story to be like characters, themes, the sort of meat or of what's going on in fiction. Narrative is the shape, the house, the beginning, middle, end, the structure of how the story is organized. So for my paper, I looked at three very different works, or actually not different, actually, three works spread out over the entire canon, the entire historical literary canon. The first book was the Decameron, was written in the mid-14th century. The Immortal, written in 1947, and a book called The House of Leaves, written in the year 2000. Each work was written in a different source language. The first one Italian, the second one Spanish, and then English. Of course, I don't speak Spanish or Italian, so I read them in English. But my paper was looking more or less at how a certain kind of narrative, a special kind of narrative, called the frame, a story within a story. So like I'm telling you a story about Bob. Bob told me this story. This is Bob's story. So there's kind of like elements of layers within a narrative. I wanted to look at how this frame device you could consider universal or timeless. Is this one device has existed for thousands of years, and I also used the paper to look forward. Right now in the literary scene worldwide, there's more of a movement towards a globalized or more international canon where the different walls between this is Russian literature, this is British, this is American, this is Canadian, the walls are starting to sort of slowly come down in a way. So in some sense, it was more of a speculative paper than a purely research assignment.
So let me ask you the question. The burning question is that you're trying to become a fictional writer, and yet you've submitted a paper which is actually not fiction, but is analysis.
Yes.
So how does these analysis skills, you think, help you, or what's the potential for that helping you when you actually do your real writing, your fictional writing?
This is something I asked myself when this was given to me as part of this program, is that I wrote the paper in terms of kind of, not like a how-to, but kind of like these are certain aspects of how literature is written and how it's constructed, and here are some insights that I gained into researching books going back very, like a long time ago. Like, there's something to be said about reading literature from the 14th century or the 13th century and still finding something that is still relevant to our modern era within something that it was written by someone who's been dead thousands of years ago. I mean, I'm not the only fiction writer out there, so I mean, I guess I am here representing the Department of English. I mean, the academic sort of approach I took was to just dig as much as I could into the history and to how much that relates to what's going on now and to how it could relate to what's going on in the literary canon looking forward. So it's very different than looking into stalking and emails from government officials. I can
Absolutely. So what sort of lessons do you have or insights for other students, given your experience?
What Anita said about picking a topic that you're interested in, that's mandatory, I would say. If you're, I agree completely. If the eat and sleep the topic you've researched. One thing I would also mention is that I've been very lucky with this CityU creative writing program to have amazing faculty and staff to work with. I would recommend that to come as early as possible, come to an understanding with your faculty about what you're going to work on, what goals you're going to set for yourself, and what your I wouldn't say what your weaknesses are, but what are the aspects of what you're trying to research, like to make sure that you're not missing something. I do agree with what was said earlier about an important part of what these papers represent is just pushing for new knowledge. You can't do everything yourself. I mean, you have to listen to others to make sure that you're not missing a giant blind spot, a blind spot in what you're trying to research and achieve.
Thank you very much, Robert. Please give a round of applause for these three students.
Thank you very much, Professor Bacon.